Hello everybody, this is Kirusho here. Now then, whenever we last left off, Deku, he had been fighting off a bit of poison in his system, and has actually met a female Kirishima. Now, let us begin. About 2 weeks have passed, and Deku has actually been able to properly heal. But he has not been sitting around and resting. He's actually been helping some of the other, sisters in this orphanage. Technically, it's not an orphanage, it's a church, but it's also their home. This is the only town on the planet that is somewhat inhabitable, since the buildings are still there. Now, Deku has been learning different techniques for cooking, and has actually been learning a bit of combat training from them too. Now, with that being said, Deku, he would wake up today, and he is told by one of the Space Marines that he is going to be back into training. Now, let us begin. As they would walk outside, Deku and quite a lot of other children being there, they would find that there seem to be a lot more teachers here, as the, Space Marines call them. They are actually more brothers and sisters they've recruited to their cause. There seem to be at least 20 more people, as someone makes the town feel a bit more lively. They are humans from Earth that have been able to somewhat pass through certain trials. They have not gotten to the rank of Space Marine, but they have gotten close to it. So they serve to help with their armor and their weapons. Now, with that being said, they also do help gather information and other things that the Marines would not understand about Earth, since it has been a long time. Now, they are split up once again. Deku, he is not with Kirishima this time. She is going somewhere else. She's actually going with the nuns, which Deku finds a bit confusing because they aren't dressed in their regular uniforms today. They're dressed in armor too. This is a bit weird. Well, as he would just wave her off, as he gets pulled aside by a Marine. This Marine would say that he is not going to be going with this group today. He'll be coming with him. As the Marine would take Deku over to a new group, as one of the kids would walk through Deku's group. Now, with that, Deku, he was placed in the group in charge of the physical portion, basically the survival training and somewhat getting away from, not getting away, but at least the pain tolerance training, since he's the only kid on the planet who's fought off poison, as he is put into a group of kids that will be taking the chemicals and somewhat building their immunities, basically helping build their immune systems. Now, this might sound a bit weird, or probably bad, but the Space Marines, during their training, they actually expose themselves to hazardous chemicals and things that could be bad for their health. But they're not gonna toss a frag grenade or tear gas into a kid's face. They'd give them small doses of these chemicals. Basically just small little pills. They won't be enough to affect you physically, but your immune system will still register them and start building an immunity to them. But along with that, they would be doing that along with physically training. Push-ups, sit-ups, running, and climbing. One of those Deku's done fairly well in. But today, the Space Marine, he is not wearing armor. As everyone was staring at him, he begins to actually stretch and crack his knuckles, as they are at a cliffside. The Space Marine would say that if they can get up the mountain, then they have passed. However, if any of you fall, then sadly, you may not survive. I understand that that sounds bad, but please understand. This is how training was for us. Now, Deku, hearing that, it's a bit shocked, since that basically means that they can't be saved. Now, the Marine would have immediately started climbing as people watch him go from basically standing in front of them to already almost 10 to 15 feet up into the air, as the Marine basically just keeps climbing up and over again, not even stopping to even try and find a rock to grab, which is impressive. Now, they would begin, as they are told that this is a race to the top. Whoever can get there the fastest, they are not doing a certain exercise. Basically, they can get out of combat training for about 5 to 10 minutes. Which, that may not sound like a lot of time, but considering how much they get pushed a day, that's actually a good number of, rest time, since they only usually get 2. Now, with that being said, they would all begin to climb. Deku, he's actually going at a steady pace, trying to make sure he can grab steady rocks. Basically, he would reach his hand outwards for the ones that aren't sharp. And if they don't move in his hand, he pulls on them, trying to see which ones would actually give before he does move his hand over, while other kids are actually trying to rush and go up. Deku, he's somewhat just holding onto the wall as another kid's trying to push him out of the way, trying to get where he is, as Deku would somewhat have to push them away. They would have moved backwards and got annoyed, but Deku, he would have just climbed up more. The kid not really caring, deciding that he can just climb next to Deku. Now, eventually they would have gotten 20 to 30 feet off the ground. And they would keep going. Deku, he finds a steady rock and he climbs up it, again with his right hand, again with his left hand. Whenever he brings his right hand outwards to grab a rock, it doesn't feel steady. So he moves his hand to the left and grabs the one next to it, going up and continuing. However, the kid to his right, he grabs this unsteady rock. As soon as he does so, he pulls on it as hard as he can because he wants to get past Deku. As soon as Deku hears that rock collapse, he would have turned his head to see this kid, falling. As soon as that happens, Deku would have tried reaching out for him. He barely grabs him, as Deku's holding onto a rock, trying to keep his body stable. The kid somewhat swings around Deku, and Deku's having a hard time holding onto them, as his arm would somewhat, give on him. He almost lets go of the kid, but as soon as that happens, the kid is able to grab onto the, ledge underneath him. He is able to get his hand into place and somewhat steady himself out. As Deku, he's able to swing his body and slam him into the wall, the kid grabbing onto it and grabbing whatever he can as much as possible. Deku, being tired, he would continue climbing. Whenever he reaches out his right hand, he finds that he pulled something in it, or pulled something in his arm, and it hurts, but he needs to reach the top fast. As they would continue, one kid, or at least I want to say someone, would have at least fallen. This kid did not. Someone else would have. Along with other kids not even being able to get 10 to 20 feet off the ground. Those are the ones that fell. However, they aren't as injured as this kid was. They only sprained certain things, or this kid may have actually broken his leg. Now, along with that, Deku, him and this boy would somewhat arrive at the top at the same time. Deku actually being able to climb over and swing his leg over before him, as he would have rollen over and start panting very, very heavily. As the Space Marine would be staring at Deku and this young boy, saying that they are, good. They've done well, but that is not the end of this. I said only one of you can make it to the top and get to 10 minutes. You two both arrived at the same time, so you'll be sharing it. 5 minutes each. As the kid would have just started thanking Deku, saying that he didn't expect that to be unstable. Deku, he would have just told him that that's okay, but they just need to rest for a minute. As Deku begins to just stretch his right arm and try and get things in order with it. Eventually, 5 minutes would pass. The rest of the kids arriving and the ones at the bottom of the cliff being put through more and more training by another Space Marine, or at least a sister. Now, after that happens, Deku, him and this boy actually do spar against each other. For the sake of it, let's call him John. Now, these two, they're actually fighting as the Space Marine instructs them how to throw a proper punch. And at least keep your footing. Now, they would have been fighting and actually basically somewhat being a bit silly. A lot of the kids are. The Space Marine getting them back in line and properly telling them to do this. As they would continue training more and more and more. Now, the day would end and they would all return back to the church. Deku somewhat putting his hand in cold water. Actually being able to let it stay for a minute. And, well, feel better. The next day, training continues. As they keep going on this process, over and over and over again, for the next month to 2 months. Everyone has actually gotten better. And the Space Marines have actually given them somewhat of a, well, ranking, as you can call it. The Space Marines just call them Scouts. And, well, it's it's really cool. But it's kind of weird. Because they start getting in this mind state where you have to be a bit more serious and you kind of can't be a kid anymore. But they understand it. Now, with that being said, after these 2 months, Deku, he would see Kirishima again. Him and her got paired up in the same group, and she seems to be a bit different in her mentality. Along with the way she acts. She seems to be a bit more serious, also. But she also does have something in her hair. He's not sure what it is. It looks like the tips of her hair are turning white, and it's kind of distracting. Especially since her hair is black. Now, these two are actually put into the group that is in charge of hunting their food. And they are told that they must feed their brothers and their sisters before they can feed themselves. Now, Deku, he can somewhat understand that. You have to put others before you put yourselves there. Which, this thought kind of confuses him for seconds. If he can't care for himself, how is he going to care for others? That doesn't make any sense. Anyways, now, the Marine, he would somewhat lay out a table, saying that they are going to be giving these as weapons. As they basically handed out sticks. The Marine saying that they are in charge of hunting. He will supervise and make sure that they do not get hurt much. However, I will use my apothecary if you are seriously injured, and I deem it to be necessary. So, anything you can kill and or hunt, bring it back. I will be close by. Now, the Marine, he would just walk away, which kind of confused them, as a lot of kids began to talk and somewhat pair up together. Deku and Kirishima actually doing so. Now, Deku, he would try asking a question about her hair. But she does one simple thing before he can even say anything. She hardens her hand, and it somewhat looks like a blade, but it also looks like a rock, as she would open her fingers and put the stick through them, beginning to somewhat sharpen it, or at least try to. As Deku would try asking her a question while they walk. What happened to your hair? Huh? Oh, this. As she would bring her hand up. She holds it out in front of her face, saying that it's a bit different. Apparently the nuns, they kinda gave us something. Or, well, the sisters. It's still kinda weird. But anyways, they gave us these certain things. They actually do help us quite a bit, and we were told that in order for us to be the proper sisters, then we're supposed to be trained a certain way. What do you mean, train a certain way? Well, the sisters say that we can use tech and other stuff to actually make up for our shortcomings in battle. What do you mean, shortcomings? Well, apparently they. As she would somewhat try trailing off. As she would have gotten distracted, looking directly at something moving in the bushes. As she would move forward, the two immediately coming across an animal. It looks somewhat like a deer, but it's different. The hooves, they don't look like regular feet, or well, animal feet. They seem to have claws. And this thing seems to have its eyes at the side of its head, not in front of it. So exactly what is going on? As they would watch this animal, they watch as something else comes by. This thing looks like a purple squirrel with 8 eyes, and a scorpion's tail, along with its skin looking a bit more reptilian. They would watch as this deer, as they nickname it, would lunge forward, and immediately begin running after this thing and actually snapping at it. As they would watch the tree the thing was climbing on basically have a chunk taken out of it, which somewhat frightens them. And it's actually a bit scary. Now, Deku, he tells Kirishima that they need to get away from this thing. That is dangerous. Hey, listen, we have to hunt something, okay? If we don't hurry up and do this, this can get bad. Now, with that being said, this is whenever 2 other kids would walk up, as Deku can see them. There seems to be a black-haired girl, and there seems to be another boy. As these two would just somewhat go to speak. As soon as that happens, Deku just brought his hand up, saying, over his mouth, just motioning to be quiet. Really, really be quiet. Do not say a single word. As they can see fear somewhat on Deku's face. And he's actually a very good person, so they know that this is good, or at least bad, if he's trying to warn them. Now, the girl would go on saying that this is a bit challenging. Exactly what are you guys doing? As they would basically just look over the bushes, staring at this creature. Deku just motioning over and at least pointing over at that tree. They would look to see this huge chunk of, wood with splinters in it, and it's a bit missing. They would just ask exactly what does that mean. Deku just motioning for his mouth and just, basically showing that he's biting down on it, and pointing at that thing. To which they would somewhat understand. This thing, it, it bit through that? Deku somewhat just nodding. As the girl with black hair, she would start using her quirk. Deku finding this a bit odd. watching as something basically materializes out of nowhere. And the girl puts it on. It looks to be another weapon, or at least a piece of metal that she attaches to the end of her spear. Now, she basically does that, and she actually does look over at Deku, basically holding this outwards and handing it over to him, saying that she can try distracting it and he can try killing it, okay? To where Kirishima would just, well, say that that's not going to work. Listen, we need another idea. Well, let's. Crap. As she would try thinking on this, she thinks about it for a second and she actually does create another thing. She creates it and actually does hand it over to Deku. It is essentially an armed guard, or at least something made out of very, very weird metal. She made it out of steel, and it should work. Deku trying to slide this over his arm. It's a bit small, so she would have to create another one. Although this time she has to make it a bit smaller, since that one was a bit too bulky anyway. And she is, well, hungry now. So, this is where Deku, he slides it over his arm, and it actually does fit a little bit better. Albeit it's a little bit loose, but it will work. Deku handing over the spear to Kirishima, saying that he could be a distraction. He'll just make sure to not let it near his throat, as he somewhat just kinda has a bit of fear on his face. Deku saying as soon as he gets its attention to fight it, and or take it down. As the other two would nod. This boy just doing the same, as he agrees with them. Deku, he moves over about 5 to 10 feet to his right, and he just gets ready, taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out, as he brings up his left arm to his chest. His heart is beating as loud as possible, and he begins to run out and actually start making noise. As soon as that happens, quite a lot of kids can hear this, as so does the Space Marine. He actually begins to move in that direction and start to observe this, as he sees this animal. Well, this is not good, as he will have his apothecary ready. Now, the Rainwood watches this young boy immediately just runs out, and this this deer would start running straight at Deku, going to actually bite at him. As soon as Deku watches this thing's, mouth open, Deku, he throws up his left arm, and he has his right hand covering his left hand. As he jams the arm guard into this thing's mouth, as it begins to actually rip and try and tear into the metal. As Deku can feel the pressure, it's actually squeezing his arm. And he would immediately just scream now, as Kirishima and Momo would run out, along with his young boy, running forward and actually stabbing into this thing as they pin it to the ground. This thing actually still putting up a fight with the armed guard, tearing through it and actually being able to dig into Deku's arm a bit. Deku just basically holding down its mouth and most of its head, as the thing would finally just keep biting at the arm guard. Deku can feel it just keeping a firm grasp on him, as it is actually trying to wave around its head and get to Kirishima and the other two. As the thing would finally drop its head, and Deku would just have to slide his hand out of this guard. However, whenever he does slide his hand out of it, he actually does cut it up quite a bit more. As he just holds on, basically looks at his arm, and he just somewhat tries to cover it up. As the Space Marine would have walked forward, he would have said that that was a good job. They were actually able to take down a, predator. Those are one of the harder species to hunt. You do understand that the smaller ones, however, are more harmless, correct? Yeah? Yes, sir. So, why did you insist on taking this one down? Well, it was a threat. Mm-hmm. And as Kirishima and Momo would both state that any threat to the Imperium is not to be tolerated, so you must execute it swiftly. To which Deku would just be a bit more concerned, realizing that they somewhat had it covered. The Space Marine would have watched Deku, who's trying to keep his arm at least wrapped, as he would have told Deku to let him look at that, as the Marine would begin, well, giving Deku medical aid, patching up the area in a thin layer of plastic to at least cover and at least clean the wound, since it is coated with, well, rubbing alcohol, and is able to kill any bacteria that the animal may have put in the Deku system, as he would have wrapped it over. And he would instruct them to bring their hunt back over to the church, as Deku, Kirishima, Momo, and this kid would be in charge of dragging this thing back to town, which they would eventually do after some time. As they would have seen all the other kids, they have smaller animals. They have these creatures that look like the squirrels, the things that look like scorpions. They even have something that looks like a giant butterfly, but it's... Yikes, that thing looks scary. Because it's not an actual butterfly. They also have more and more animals that they can't even begin to describe. Which, they're all tiny and small, but the biggest one is even half the size of what they took down. And people would be actually amazed, as they do actually see Deku's arm covered in a bandage. But the other three are unharmed. So, exactly what happened? Now, they would get back to hunting, as for the rest of the day, Deku and these three would collect more and more animals. Smaller ones this time. Now, eventually, the day would be over, and they would go to help make dinner. Now, that is going to be where I leave this part off of, guys. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and have an amazing day. I'll catch you guys in the next part.